Hello, and welcome to the North Coast Journal Preview. This is a show where we take a look at what's coming to this week's edition of the North Coast Journal. I am your host, Tanya Shrum, and we are joined by North Coast Journal's news editor, Thad Greenson, and arts and features editor, Jennifer Fumiko Cahill. Welcome to you both. How are you hanging in there?
I think Thad is hanging in with very little sleep, as is typical for elections.
Absolutely.
That is factually correct.
Well, I appreciate you being with us, and we're going to talk about some news coming to our community that I think everybody will enjoy. Thad, you want to talk about what's coming to this week's cover?
Yeah, this week's cover is election related. Surprise, surprise. We thought it would be a good idea kind of heading into the election just to give folks some insight into kind of what the process is at the elections office, both to ensure that kind of everybody who is eligible, has an opportunity to cast a ballot, but also to make sure that those ballots are then counted and counted accurately, and there is no tomfoolery afoot, the type that we have heard so much about in recent years. So I caught up with our local registrar of voters, Juan Paul Cervantes, and just talked to him kind of, like I said, just about the elections process, everything from kind of the early votes and stuff like that to kind of all the stuff they have to do after polls close at 8 p.m. on Tuesday until they get the election certified. There's just a lot of regimented processes they need to follow, and it helps kind of, I think, explain why the process takes so long. I know there's some folks who, get frustrated that we no longer have, final results on the morning after Election Day, and now it stretches for some weeks before local races are finalized.
Absolutely. And I think that it was a really great article to kind of describe the process and all the hard work that goes into it.
Yeah, I appreciate that, and I think I think that it is a yeoman's effort to pull off an election. And I think even more so now that the Voting Choice Act has come into play in California, which has really changed the way local elections are conducted. So, prior to 2019, there was a kind of a stalwart group that voted by mail, but most folks showed up at the polls and voted at the polls on Election Day. And the Voters' Choice Act passed actually before the pandemic. Kind of the timing was very good on that, because it really morphed the way we do elections so that vote by mail ballots are kind of the default now. So every registered voter in California gets one sent to their home or their registered address, and the assumption is that they will fill them out at home and mail them in or drop them in one of the drop boxes set up throughout the county. But they want to give folks kind of as many opportunities and as many ways to vote as possible. So instead of having kind of polling locations set up throughout the county that are just open on Election Day now, we have those have scaled back from something like 100 there used to be down to 13. So now there's these 13 in-person voting centers, and some of them are open like at the Humboldt County Elections Office almost a month prior to Election Day, really giving folks a chance who want to vote in person to do it kind of at their as their schedule allows and at their convenience, and then others that are open for 10 days or even 3 days prior to Election Day. But the kind of the mantra of the state of California, which Juan Paul Cervantes has adopted, is kind of more ways and more days to vote. What this does on the other end, though, is creates a lot of logistical challenges for the elections office, because It used to be that they knew, for instance, like McKinleyville voters would be voting on certain races, and so they'd send just McKinleyville ballots to McKinleyville voting centers. And if you showed up there, you showed up at your designated precinct, and they gave you your designated ballot, and you voted on it. Now they need to be prepared for any voter who's going to be voting in, any district within the county to vote at any of these polling locations. So they've shifted to a print ballot on demand, process, where if a voter shows up and doesn't have their absentee ballot, they look them up in the voter registration database, and they print a ballot specifically for them. This does create some logistical challenges. I don't know if you heard, but there were some pretty long lines at some voting places yesterday. And I think part of that is there's a voter education component, and we're all kind of adjusting into this new system. But what they found yesterday at the Arcata Community Center particularly is lots and lots of voters were showing up having not brought their vote by mail ballot with them. And then that's kind of becomes a more time-consuming process because they need to log them in, register, make sure they're registered, and then print out a ballot specifically for them. And so I went up to the Arcata Community Center last night as polls closed, like right at 8 p.m. And there was a line, probably 100 people deep, like stretching out into the parking lot of folks still waiting to vote. And I would imagine they didn't clear that line until, maybe 8:30 or so, right before the first returns came out. So anyway, I think there's a lot of interesting stuff there. And then I think what I was really interested in talking to him about, and what I thought was really clear, is just kind of the efforts that the office takes to make sure that folks aren't voting multiple times. That, like I said, there's no tomfoolery, that everything is kind of straight and narrow. And so, some folks I don't think too much about the signature they throw on their absentee ballot, or that they sign as they sign in to get a ballot in person. But those signatures are really verified, and so they're verified. Images of the signature are verified against past either registration signatures or past election signatures, and they're done by at least two different people who sign off to make sure that this signature matches previous signatures and this voter is who they say they are. And then there's just a really regimented vote counting system that's like all in a closed loop. So, the computers used to tabulate ballots and stuff aren't connected to the internet. They don't have random USB drives coming and going. It's just very controlled to make sure that nobody tries to infiltrate the system and there's no kind of outside forces at play.
Oh, that's all very fascinating, and it should bring folks the knowledge and feeling good and positive about the security of casting their vote.
Yeah, I thought it was really interesting. One of the things I wanted to do for the story was catch up with our local Republican Party. So I caught up with Susan Moxon, who's the chair of the Humboldt County Republican Central Committee. And she has been posting some things on Facebook that are very much feeding into the quote unquote big lie, this kind of unfounded myth that Donald Trump has perpetuated for years now, that the 2020 election was somehow stolen, that there was widespread fraud, which there's just really no evidence of. But she has been posting things on the local GOP Facebook page, kind of feeding this myth. And, I think a couple days prior to Election Day posted something to the extent of, my prayer is that it's too big to steal. And so I was curious what she would say about our local elections. I also knew that the local GOP was doing some poll monitoring efforts and stuff like that. And I was kind of surprised when I got on the phone with her. She was like, I believe in the election integrity of the Humboldt County Elections Office. I think our elections here are fine. We're doing due diligence as far as having monitors to observe various parts of the process and see if there's things that can be improved upon. But she really had nothing negative to say about the way votes are counted in Humboldt County. Again, even as she's kind of buying into and feeding this larger national myth.
I saw a lot of information about how different precincts across the country had shown more transparency and in really kind of catered to putting those kind of myths to bed. And so I hope that maybe that's at least something we see less of as that kind of information is reported.
I hope so. I guess two things I'll add before we move on. One is I was really, there have been reports close to home in Shasta County about elections observers being rather caustic to election workers and creating kind of very hostile environments that election workers didn't feel safe in. So, I mean, for instance, the Shasta County Elections Office has had kind of an exodus of employees who quit, just feeling like it wasn't worth the hassle. And I was really relieved to hear from Juan and others that that's not an issue here. That all of the observers, whether they're from the GOP or other political campaigns, have just been really respectful. The elections office folks feel like they're an asset. They want more eyes and ears to alert them if something's going wrong. And to date, nothing untoward has happened with them. There haven't been any uncomfortable situations. And then just on the transparency note. I have been kind of amazed for years now that the Humboldt County has this really cutting edge project, the Humboldt County Transparency Project, where every ballot cast in local elections are put through a separate optical scanner. They're kind of redacted from any identifying information, and images of them are made available to kind of anybody from the public who goes in and asks for them. And you can take home a DVD or a thumb drive with all the images cast in a local election and open source software that allows you to count various races and do recounts kind of as you see fit. And in Humboldt, this has been, game changing. I mean, it is both ages ago alerted us to an error in election software that resulted in some ballots being deleted, but it also has just alleviated the need for recounts and for campaigns to self-fund recounts. So we've had a bunch of very close elections that haven't gone to a recount because folks have been able to kind of conduct those recounts on their own and see that everything is as it should be. And for the life of me, I don't understand why that isn't a model that hasn't been replicated everywhere, honestly. It just seems such a simple solution to such a serious question that a lot of people have.
Yeah, that's absolutely fascinating. And I appreciate that ray of sunshine today on all of that reporting, Thad. And we're going to circle back to you for more information on our local elections. But first, we're going to move over to who is always our ray of sunshine. And she has some wonderful stories about local families getting started.
Well, I have to say, you're the only person who calls me a ray of sunshine, unless you're talking about the one that goes through a magnifying glass to an ant. But I do have some positive news. And, it would be ridiculous if I didn't mention that a lot of people are waking up today feeling absolutely thrown for a loop by the election results. And here's a little positive news to cleanse your palate before you go back to doom scrolling. A couple of sort of comebacks for spaces that are iconic eateries. So for one thing, Fieldbrook Market, RIP Fieldbrook Market, long live Fieldbrook Country Kitchen. When Fieldbrook Market closed, Patty O'Dwyer said that he would drive by and sort of feel sad about it and daydream about opening it up, and boy, what would it take to do it? And then he did. He said that it's kind of now or never. And the opening date is planned and set. He's got all of his ABC stuff in order. He's finalizing a menu, doing all that stuff. And hopefully, fingers crossed, the November 29 event at 3 p.m. with the Lost Dogs will bring back that spot as a place to gather, a place to eat, enjoy some music, socialize, catch up with your neighbors. It will not be as much of a market. He said he is scaling back the market end of it and really focusing on farm to table eating, which means not only which farm, local farms, but also the O'Dwyer family farm, which he's in the process of getting all the paperwork together so that they can be producers for all kinds of vegetables and things like that in the restaurant. And he's planning to put together a greenhouse out back for herbs and whatnot. So what could be nicer than something cooked with herbs just clipped out back? You can expect, from the name, Patty O'Dwyer, you might expect there's going to be an Irish stew, and indeed there will. He's got all kinds of plans for soups and things like that, and barbecue. He's a big barbecue guy. A couple of names you might recall. There are some family members of his, depending on when you started restauranting in Humboldt County. You may know Don and Gretchen Elder from Larrapin, the Benbow Inn, Seascape, and you may know Juan Martinez from Stardo's in Blue Lake. They will all be on hand working in the kitchen too. So that's a lovely kind of return of some, a comeback for some faces that you might have missed. Over in Eureka, listen, I could use more sunshine, internal sunshine. I could also use blowing out all my mental receptors with flavor right now. So thank goodness this is really close to our office. The former, you remember when Masaki's Kyoto turned into Chuchi's Sandwich Shop, and then Chuchi's Sandwich Shop sadly had to close, and it's been empty for a bit until it opened over the summer, and we got the Taco Town Fruteria. Fruteria? How do I say that? Thad, help me.
I think it's Fruteria, right?
Fruteria.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay.
So, first of all, gorditas. I should tell you that they have gorditas. I know that there is a very loyal gordita following out there. They are there. The food is lovely. You may find it familiar from the mall, the Raspado stand, which is the Fresh and Fruity Raspado stand. I'm a big fan of their huaraches, but at this place they have the gorditas, they have tacos. I haven't had a crispy taco since, I don't know. I think since I discovered the existence of soft tacos. And but I went and had one there, and it was kind of wonderful and nostalgic and delightful. They make a very nice cabeza, by the way. If you're a fan of cabeza, that might be the thing for you to try. But the thing that blew my mind and blew out all my receptors is the mangonada, which, if you haven't had one of late, go back and re-experience it. When you look at a mangonada, it looks like a lava lamp with actual lava in it. It is a fantastic parfait. It's like $10. Don't balk at that. It is a $10 ride, trust me. It is full of mango sorbet that the owner, Samira Ayala, makes by blending frozen mangoes with or without a little bit of sugar, depending on how sweet the mangoes are, and basically just making a sorbet, a fresh fruit sorbet. She does it with all different fruits, but the mango is the one that spoke to me. And it has the marvelous chamoy, the chamoy sauce that is that fantastic lava-like, spicy, sour, kind of flooding all the empty spaces between the scoops of sorbet. And even the straw is dipped in the chamoy, and you're just kind of swirling your way. It's like falling down a rabbit hole of deliciousness, and it will erase everything from your mind, clear your skin, make you forget negative thoughts. The mangonada.
Oh, Jennifer, that's exactly what we needed to discuss. Thank you for that palate cleanse. And everybody get out there and support these new businesses. And with that, we're going to switch back and get into our local elections with Thad. You want to bring it home for us, sir?
Yeah. While most or all eyes last night were on national politics, there was a whole lot of stuff. I almost cursed there, but there was a ton of stuff on the local ballot. And so
I can't believe
this
it was
week,
almost
this week's
you.
journal, we have a full election grid with kind of all of the local races for council seats and a couple of harbor commission seats that were open, and then the kind of glut of local ballot measures that we have. So a couple big results that I think people were intrigued about. One is Measure O, the countywide sales tax. It seems to have passed decisively. I should say that there are probably tens of thousands of ballots that are still uncounted at this point. So we kind of do our best as results come in to kind of gauge the trends and try to figure out which races we can call, not unlike the big wigs do on the networks for the national races. But so we figure Measure O is done. It is going to pass. It would be a huge statistical anomaly if it did not. So we're all going to start paying 1% extra on our sales tax, with that money earmarked to go toward road repairs and disaster preparedness on a countywide level. And another big one that we had was Measure F, which had a lot of eyes on it, even though it was a Eureka-specific measure. And this, of course, was the pro parking lot, quote unquote, Housing for All initiative, bankrolled by Security National and local businessman Robin Arkley. This was he spent $1.6 million on the measure. It's the most expensive measure in Eureka's history. It would have blocked a bunch of affordable housing projects by essentially putting kind of onerous restrictions on these the city's plans to convert parking lots into housing, and voters decisively rejected it by about 70% of the vote, which was a relatively surprising outcome. Given kind of the amount of misinformation that was circulating about the measure and what it did, the amount of confusion that was circling about the measure and what it did, and just how much money was spent on consultants and mailers and commercials and all the rest. So I was definitely very unsure kind of how that would play when it went to voters, just because there has been so much discussion and again just so much media out there, so much paid media out there about Measure F.
Well, and I'm just really glad that you were able to bring that reporting and educate the community before going to the ballot box.
Well, I appreciate that. It's, sometimes it's hard to, as a reporter, it's hard to gauge kind of how much of what you're putting out is getting through. I would say in the last couple months, I don't think a week went by when I didn't talk to somebody who wasn't really confused about kind of what Measure F was, whether it created housing, and what its impact was. It was funny. I'll save that for another day. But I was really, that was going into election day. That was one of the local items that I was most curious to see how it turned out, because of the massive amount of money spent on it and how much that advertising kind of seemed to permeate everything, between mailers and radio ads and TV ads and the like.
Yeah, there's enough paper, I think, from all of those mailers that you could actually build temporary housing with it.
Well, at least it would make a wonderful artistic paper mache project that we could put in Morse graves. Well, before we wrap up today and go back to whatever the day takes us, is there anything else you'd like to highlight from the elections?
No, I guess I just encourage everybody to either pick up the Journal, which has the bulk of the results in it this week, or to visit the Humboldt County Elections Office website. It was a really, really stacked local ballot. So everything from school board races to school bonds to council races. There's just a lot of stuff on there. And, and I'm a firm believer that local elections have maximum impact. So, there'll be some new faces in council chambers and school boards and whatnot. And
Well, I appreciate it, and thank you to you both for bringing us information about our North Coast community. And that kind of wraps up our time for this week. The current edition of the North Coast Journal is available on newsstands now. Get in, pick it up, get through all those deep dives into our local elections. And of course, you can always find it online at northcoastjournal.com. Thanks to you both for being with us today, and I know we have a lot of sleep to catch up on. I am Tanya Schrum, And thanks for staying informed and supportive here in our North Coast community.